Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to close your eyes for a second. I want you to imagine you were standing in a parking lot. It's a nice day, maybe a little warm.
Oh.
Suddenly, the air pressure drops. You feel a thumping in your chest. Not a sound, but a physical pressure wave, like someone is rhythmically punching you in the sternum.
Oh, yeah. It's distinct, isn't it? It's not just noise, it's a seismic event.
It's seismic. The ground underneath your feet actually starts to vibrate.
It really does. You feel it through the soles of your shoes.
Exactly. And then the smell hits you. It's not the smell of gas stations or exhaust. It's sharp. It's acidic. It makes your eyes water immediately, and the back of your throat starts to burn.
It's an unforgettable smell.
One of our sources described it as the noxious fumes washing over you, but I think another description nailed it better. They called the start of this engine opening the gates of hell.
That is not an exaggeration, not in the slightest. When 8 cylinders of a top-fuel dragster light up, you are essentially standing next to a controlled volcano.
And before your brain can even process the violence of the noise, which is loud enough to rupture eardrums if you aren't wearing protection, the machine is gone.
Just vanished.
It streaks toward the horizon as if thrown by the hand of God. We are talking, of course, about top fuel drag racing.
The absolute pinnacle of straight-line acceleration. And, frankly, the pinnacle of internal combustion extremism. There's no other way to describe it.
Extremism is the perfect word for it. Because the premise we are exploring today is the absurdity of scale. We spend a lot of time analyzing motorsports. We've done deep dives on Formula One, we've looked at the strategy of NASCAR, the engineering of IndyCar.
All fascinating in their own right.
Absolutely. But when you look at the operational philosophies, top fuel isn't just a different sport, it's like it's from a different planet.
It really is. If you look at Formula One or NASCAR, or really any endurance racing, the engineering discipline is entirely focused on efficiency and management.
Right, lasting the distance.
You are managing heat dissipation, you're managing fuel economy, you are managing tire degradation over hundreds of miles. An F1 race is 2 hours. The Coca-Cola 600 in NASCAR is 4 or 5 hours. It is a strategic game of resource conservation.
You're trying to make the car survive.
Precisely. You're trying to go as fast as possible while not breaking the machine. Top fuel is the exact opposite philosophy.
Completely inverts.
It is immediate, explosive power. It is about maximum violence for an extremely short duration. We are talking about an engine designed to survive, barely, for less than 4 seconds.
It's not a marathon runner.
No, it is a bomb designed to explode in a single direction. And if it survives that explosion without turning to shrapnel, you consider it a success.
I want to anchor this in some numbers because I think people hear fast car and they think, oh, like a Bugatti. No, this is something else entirely. We have this engine wars breakdown in the research, and the gap is just, it's laughable.
It is hard to comprehend. The numbers don't feel real.
So let's look at the contenders. You have a modern Formula One car, the Mercedes hybrid era, a marvel of engineering.
Truly.
It's a 1.6-liter V6 plus hybrid electrics producing roughly 1,000 horsepower.
Which is incredible for a 1.6-liter engine. That is efficiency perfected. That's, hundreds of horsepower per liter.
Right. Then you have NASCAR, a Chevy R07 engine, naturally aspirated V8. It's putting out somewhere between 550 and 750 horsepower, depending on the package in the track.
And that relies heavily on airflow efficiency. They don't use turbos. They don't use superchargers. It's all about how well the head breathes. It's a very pure form of engine building.
Right. IndyCar is sitting around 735 horsepower. Even pro stock drag racing, which is the class below the big dogs, is impressive.
Yeah, even the little brother is a monster.
About 1,400 horsepower, naturally aspirated.
Which is already double a NASCAR engine.
But then you have top fuel.
The headline act.
We are talking over 11,000 horsepower.
Let's pause on that number. 11,000.
Does that sound right?
It sounds like a made-up statistic. To put that in context for you, a single cylinder, just one of the 8 cylinders of a top fuel engine, produces more power than an entire NASCAR engine.
Wait, hold on. Run that by me again. One cylinder.
One cylinder is producing roughly 1,300 to 1,400 horsepower.
That's more than a Formula One car.
Yes. So you are essentially strapping 8 Formula One cars together, or 8 NASCAR fields worth of power, into a chassis made of chrome moly tubing, and you are trying to make it go straight.
It overpowers every other motorsport on Earth combined in terms of raw output.
It does. And that is the mission of this deep dive. We aren't just reciting stats. We want to unpack the engineering violence required to make a car accelerate faster than a fighter jet.
Right.
We want to understand the chemistry and the physics that allow this engine to hold together for those 4 seconds. Because, as we'll find out, the laws of physics are fighting back the entire time.
So let's start with that operational philosophy. We touched on it, but I want to really dig into the 4-second lifestyle, because the duration changes everything about how you built the car, right?
It dictates the entire architecture. Everything. In F1 or NASCAR, you have to think about cooling cycles. You have to think about oil degradation over time. You have water pumps, radiators, thermostats, all this plumbing.
The whole support system.
The whole support system for longevity. In Top Fuel, the engine is designed to be, for all intents and purposes, destroyed during a single run of 1,000 feet.
Destroyed? You mean like worn out?
No, I mean fundamentally compromised.
Yeah.
The internal components are stressed to their absolute yielding point. There's no casting.
Right.
In circuit racing, you have partial throttle, you have braking zones where the engine is offload and can cool slightly. A Top Fuel run is binary. It is on or it is off.
There's no easing into it. You don't merge onto the highway.
No. There's an idle, and then there is wide open throttle. That's it. And that binary nature creates a sensory experience for the driver that is hard for us to even comprehend. Let's look at the acceleration stats from our sources, because this is where the absurdity of scale really hits home.
Yeah, these numbers are ludicrous. 0 to 100 miles per hour in less than 0.8 seconds.
Think about that. Less than a second. It takes you longer to blink and refocus your eyes than it takes this car to hit 100 miles per hour.
It's almost instantaneous. Our source mentions that a Porsche 911 Turbo, which is a terrifyingly fast road car, takes nearly 3 seconds to get to 60.
And that feels like a rocket ship to a normal person.
This dragster is doing 100 in less than 1 second.
It's faster than the human brain can process. By the time your brain registers go, you're already past 60.
And 0 to 120 miles per hour in 1.3 seconds. By the time they hit the finish line at 1,000 feet, they are doing over 330 miles per hour.
Which is 531 kilometers per hour.
In a vehicle with, let's be honest, the aerodynamic profile of a brick with wings.
It's a javelin, really. And that speed is achieved in just a few seconds. The G-force reality of that is brutal. Drivers are experiencing an average of 4.0 Gs across the run. But on the launch, it peaks over 5.6 Gs.
That's sustaining fighter pilot levels of G-force, but purely in a horizontal direction. You're being pinned to the seat by the weight of 5 of you.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and something people forget. The acceleration is violent, but the deceleration is actually worse.
Worse? How can it be worse than 5 Gs?
When they cross the line and hit the parachutes, they experience negative 7 Gs.
Negative 7?
Yes. You are going from being pinned back into your seat with 5 Gs to being thrown forward into your belts with 7 Gs in the opposite direction, all within a split second.
That sounds like a car crash.
It basically is a controlled car crash. There was an anecdote in the source that really stuck with me. It said that when you see a driver get out of the car and they are gasping for air, it's not because they were wrestling the steering wheel.
No, it's not cardio.
It's because that massive G-force swing from +5 to -7 literally compresses their lungs. They physically cannot breathe during the deceleration phase because the G-forces are squeezing the air out of them.
So they're out of breath because they've been forcibly suffocated for a second.
Yes, the physical toll is immense. It's like being in a severe car crash every time you pull the chutes. And that's just the human element. Now imagine the mechanical element. If the driver's lungs are being crushed, imagine what is happening to the piston rods.
Well, let's get into that mechanical monster. Segment 2 here, or rather the anatomy of this beast. We know it's a V8, it looks like an engine, but it's not exactly what you'd find in a pickup truck.
Not even close. It has heritage, though. It's loosely based on the second-generation Chrysler RB Hemi.
The famous elephant engine.
Right. The Hemi refers to the hemispherical combustion chambers. That shape was great for airflow back in the day. But at this level, there is nothing stock about it. The block is custom-built from forged aluminum. But here's the key difference between this and F1 or NASCAR. The Top Fuel block is solid.
Solid? What do you mean solid?
I mean, it is a waterless design.
So, no coolant, no radiator, no water pump?
None of it. Gone. If you look at an F1 engine block or the engine in your car, it's like a honeycomb. There are hollow channels, water jackets running around the cylinders to keep the temperature stable over a 2-hour race.
Carry heat away.
Exactly. You need that to prevent overheating. A Top Fuel block has no water passages. It is a solid chunk of billet aluminum with holes bored in it for the pistons.
Why? That seems like a recipe for melting.
It's about structural integrity.
Right.
When you are dealing with cylinder pressures of 1,450 psi, a hollow block with water jackets creates weak points. It's just not strong enough. Under that kind of pressure, a standard engine block would just split in half.
So the metal is there just to contain the explosion?
Purely for containment. You need that solid mass.
But wait, if there's no water, how do they keep it from melting into a puddle? There's fire inside it.
That is the magic, and it's one of the craziest parts of the whole thing. The engine is cooled entirely by the massive volume of incoming fuel and the oil.
The fuel is the coolant.
The fuel itself acts as the coolant.
That puts a whole new meaning to running rich.
It's a delicate balance. If you run it too lean, meaning too much air, not enough fuel, it melts instantly, like in a fraction of a second. If you run it too rich, you can hydrolock it. But we'll get to the fuel in a minute. We need to talk about the displacement first.
Right. F1 uses those tiny 1.6-liter engines. NASCAR is around 5.8 liters, which is 358 cubic inches.
Top Fuel uses 500 cubic inches. That's 8.2 liters. It's a massive air bomb. And sitting on top of that 8.2-liter engine is the reason for the season, the supercharger.
The 1471 Roots type blower. It sits on top like a penthouse apartment. It's iconic.
It's a legendary piece of kit. And the source had a fascinating historical note on this. Do you know what the 1371 designation actually means?
I assumed it was some engineering code, a model number.
It comes from Detroit diesel truck engines. Originally, these blowers were designed for GM diesel trucks to scavenge air. A 671 meant it was for a 6-cylinder engine where each cylinder was 71 cubic inches. So the 1471 indicates the size relative to those original designs. It's huge. It's an industrial air compressor strapped to a racing engine.
It's forcing air into the engine, but it's not free power.
No, there is no such thing as a free lunch in thermodynamics. The supercharger is belt-driven from the crankshaft. It takes power to make power. We call this parasitic loss.
And the number is mind-blowing. The source says it requires approximately 1,000 horsepower just to spin the supercharger.
Let's just let that soak in for a second. The supercharger on a top fuel car consumes as much power just to run itself as the entire Formula One car produces in total.
That is absurd. You are losing an F1 car's worth of power just to feed the engine air.
But the trade-off is worth it, because that supercharger is cramming air in at 56 to 66 psi of boost, sometimes up to 74 psi, depending on the conditions.
And for comparison, a standard road car turbo might run, what, 15 psi?
If that. Maybe 15 to 20 on a performance car.
Yeah.
And remember, NASCAR relies entirely on naturally aspirated airflow efficiency. They don't use forced induction at all.
Right, no turbos, no superchargers.
So you see the difference in philosophy. NASCAR is trying to make the air flow smoothly, using fluid dynamics to coax the air in. Top Fuel is beating the air into submission with a sledgehammer.
And because that sledgehammer is spinning so fast and compressing so much air, there is a serious danger aspect.
Blower explosions. If a spark gets past the intake valve, or if a valve sticks open, that pressurized mix of fuel and air in the supercharger can ignite.
And the whole intake manifold becomes a bomb.
It's basically a bomb sitting on top of the engine right in front of the driver's face.
Which is why they have those heavy Kevlar blankets strapped over them.
Exactly. Shrapnel containment. It's not a matter of if it blows, but when. The straps are there to keep the supercharger from launching into the grandstands.
Okay, so we have a solid block, a massive supercharger, and we are burning an F1 car's worth of power just to spin the belt. But the real secret sauce is the fuel itself. This is where we need to go to chemistry class.
Nitromethane, CH3NO2.
This isn't gasoline. This isn't even the high-octane stuff at the racetrack.
It is fundamentally different. Gasoline or petrol is a hydrocarbon. To burn it, you need to mix it with oxygen from the air. The perfect ratio, what we call the stoichiometric ratio, is about 14.7 parts air to 1 part gasoline.
So you're always limited by how much air you can suck in.
Always. The air is the oxidizer, but nitromethane is different. It carries its own oxygen
It's packing its own supply.
inside the molecule, the O2 in CH3NO2. Because it brings its own oxygen to the party, it requires much less atmospheric air to burn. The ratio is 1.7 to 1.
Whoa. So instead of nearly 15 parts air, you only need less than 2 parts air.
Exactly. Which means, for the same amount of air you can get into a cylinder, you can jam significantly more liquid fuel into it.
This is the oxygen hack.
It is, and the consequence is power density. An engine burning nitromethane produces about 2.4 times the power of the exact same engine burning gasoline. It burns slower, but it explodes with much more force.
But it's unstable, right? This isn't something you can just buy at the local pump.
Extremely. It was originally too volatile for industrial use. The source mentions that hot rodders found surplus drums of the stuff after World War II. It was essentially rocket fuel or industrial solvent ingredients that industry didn't want to touch.
And the speed freaks said,
Let's pour it in and see what happens.
suicide in a jug, they called it.
And they weren't wrong. If you hit a puddle of nitromethane with a hammer, it can explode.
Yep.
It is shock sensitive under certain conditions. It's nasty stuff.
You mentioned jamming more fuel in. I want to talk about the volume, because this is another one of those absurdity of scale moments.
A fire hose.
The consumption rates are hard to believe. A top fuel engine consumes up to 115 gallons per minute at peak RPM.
It's hard to visualize, 115 gallons a minute. Your car's fuel pump might do, what, half a gallon a minute maybe?
The source breaks it down. The fuel pump pushes 1.2 to 1.5 gallons per second into the engine during a run.
Imagine a gallon of milk, a full heavy gallon jug. Now imagine pouring that entire gallon into the engine every single second.
And it does that for 4 seconds. So that's 6 gallons of fuel for one pass down the track.
Yeah, and the total consumption for a warm-up, a burnout, and the run, which is just a few minutes of running, is between 12 and 22 gallons.
Next time you are at the gas station filling up your car, imagine your entire 15-gallon tank disappearing in the time it takes you to back out of your driveway. That is top fuel.
It's an environmentalist's nightmare, but a gearhead's dream.
But pumping that much liquid into a cylinder has risks. Liquids don't compress. We learned that in high school physics.
That's the hydrolock risk. The volume of fuel is so high that the mixture is almost a solid liquid state inside the cylinder. If a spark plug fails and that cylinder doesn't fire, the fuel doesn't burn. It just fills the space.
So the piston comes up on the compression stroke.
And it hits a wall of liquid. Something has to give.
And it's not going to be the liquid.
No. And usually it's the cylinder head blowing completely off the block, or the connecting rod snapping in half and punching a hole through the side of the engine. A catastrophic failure.
Now, visually, this fuel creates a very specific signature. We've all seen the footage, the massive yellow flames shooting out of the headers. But the expert source points out something fascinating about those flames. They aren't just cool visuals.
No, they are a diagnostic tool, and they are a part of the physics of the car. That yellow flame you see. That is actually raw hydrogen burning outside the engine.
Outside? How?
Remember, they run the mixture incredibly rich to cool the engine. It's so rich that not all the fuel burns inside the combustion chamber. There isn't enough oxygen, even with what the nitro brings.
So unburnt fuel is coming out the exhaust.
Exactly. And the intense heat breaks the nitromethane molecule down, releasing hydrogen. That super hot hydrogen exits the exhaust pipes, hits the atmospheric oxygen, and ignites.
The flames we see are basically waste. It's an afterburner effect.
It is. And here's a detail to look for. At night, if you watch closely, the flame looks white. That is the hydrogen burning with incredible intensity, pure and hot. If the flame turns yellow or orange, it's actually cooling down slightly or mixing with other contaminants. But that white hot flame is pure hydrogen burn.
And that exhaust isn't just for show, it actually helps drive the car.
It's a thrust engine. It's part rocket, part internal combustion. The exhaust gases exit the zoomies, those upswept headers, with such force that they produce between 900 and 1,100 pounds of downforce.
That's free downforce. You're not paying an aerodynamic penalty for it.
It is, but it's also a double-edged sword. If you drop a cylinder, say cylinder number 8 stops firing, you lose that downforce on one side.
So suddenly you have, over 1,000 pounds of force pushing down on the left and nothing on the right?
Exactly. And that thrust imbalance can steer the car. It can push the car right into the wall. It's not just an engine failure, it's an aerodynamic failure that happens instantaneously.
That connects back to the engineering violence mission. Even the exhaust is trying to kill you.
Everything about this car is trying to kill you, including the clutch.
Oh, the clutch. I wanted to ask about this because the source said, it's not just an engine, the car is one big clutch. What does that mean?
This is one of the hardest things to grasp about top fuel. There is no transmission.
No gears at all.
No gearbox.
Yeah.
No shifting. In an F1 car, you have 8 gears. You keep the engine in its power band by shifting. In top fuel, you have a direct drive from the engine to the rear wheels.
So how do they launch without stalling? If the engine is spinning at idle and the wheels are stopped, wouldn't it just die or just instantly smoke the tires?
That's where the clutch comes in. It is a multi-stage centrifugal clutch. It's a stack of discs. When the driver hits the gas, the clutch isn't fully engaged, it's slipping.
It's slipping on purpose.
Yes, it has to. It's designed to slip. If it locked up instantly, the tires would just smoke. or the engine would bog down and die. So the clutch acts as the transmission.
It's a variable connection.
A variable connection, exactly. As the car speeds up and the RPMs rise, centrifugal levers, they call them fingers, are pushed outward by the spinning force. These fingers press the clutch plates together harder and harder.
So it progressively locks up as you go faster.
Exactly. And the crew chiefs use pneumatic timers, literally little air cannons on the clutch cover, to throw extra weight onto those fingers at specific times. So at 0.5 seconds into the run, a timer might add 50 pounds of pressure. At 1.5 seconds, another timer adds more.
They are programming the slip curve.
Yes, they're tuning the acceleration of the car by controlling how much the clutch slips at every fraction of a second down the track. It's incredibly complex.
And what happens to the clutch at the end? All that slipping must create a lot of heat.
An unbelievable amount of heat. By the end of the run, the clutch plates have generated so much heat from that friction that they literally weld themselves together.
They weld together.
Often, yes. The discs fuse into a solid block of metal. The car essentially becomes a solid shaft from engine to tire. That's why you see them having to lift the rear tires off the ground to tow them back. The wheels won't turn freely anymore.
So the clutch is a single-use item, too.
It's a sacrificial friction fuse, and the dust inside the cockpit from that grinding clutch is thick. It gets everywhere.
This leads perfectly into the survival aspect. How long does this thing actually last? We talked about the operational philosophy of 4 seconds, but let's look at the RPM characteristics.
It's interesting. You'd think with all that power, they'd be revving to the moon. But top fuel engines are limited to about 7,900 to 8,500 RPM.
Which is high, but F1 cars rev to 15,000, Indy cars over 12,000. Even a street bike revs higher.
Right. F1 relies on RPM for power. It's about having lots of small explosions very quickly. Top fuel relies on torque and massive cylinder pressure. It's about having 8 enormous explosions, just less frequently.
So why the lower limit?
The components in a top fuel engine are heavy. The pistons are massive chunks of aluminum. The connecting rods are heavy. If you spun that mass to 15,000 RPM, the physics of centrifugal force would rip the engine apart instantly. It would just disintegrate.
It limits how fast it can spin before it flies apart. The stresses would just be too high.
Exactly. It's a low-revving, relatively high-boost monster.
And because of that stress, the rebuild cycle is, well, it's unique in motorsport.
F1 engines have to last for multiple race weekends now, thousands of kilometers. A top fuel engine is rebuilt after every pass.
Every single run, 4 seconds of use, and it's time for a rebuild.
Every run. Effectively every 3 minutes of total operation, including warm-up and burnout.
Let's look at the damage report from our source. What does a run actually do to the parts?
It's carnage. It's a controlled disassembly. Start with the spark plugs. By the end of a 4-second run, the electrodes are often completely worn away or melted. They are consumed like a fuse.
They are disposable. They don't even try to clean them.
No, they're gone. Exhaust valves. Single-use items. They get so hot they stretch and deform. They're trash after one run. Connecting rods are replaced frequently. And here is an interesting material choice. They use aluminum connecting rods.
Why aluminum? Isn't titanium stronger? F1 uses titanium.
Titanium is stronger, yes. It's stiffer. But in top fuel, they want the rod to act as a shock absorber.
A shock absorber?
Yes. Aluminum is softer. It stretches and compresses. When that violent combustion hits the piston, that 11,000 horsepower explosion, the aluminum rod actually squishes slightly. It dampens the blow so it doesn't shatter the crankshaft.
So the rod is a sacrificial part by design.
Completely. You're intentionally using a weaker material to save a stronger, more expensive one. They accept that the rod will fatigue and stretch and have to be thrown away in exchange for saving the crankshaft, which is much more expensive and harder to replace between rounds.
And after the run, the teardown ballet begins.
It is a sight to behold. If you ever go to an NHRA event, go to the pits. You can stand right next to them and watch. A crew of 7 people swarms the car.
It's choreographed, right? It has to be.
It has to be. One guy does the left side heads, one does the right. One guy is underneath, doing the bottom end bearings. One guy is on the clutch. They have it down to a science.
And what are they doing?
They strip the engine down to the bare block. Pistons out. Rods out. Supercharger off. They inspect everything. They magnaflux to the crank. They replace the damaged parts and have it back together and running in under an hour.
Under an hour.
Sometimes 40 minutes between rounds.
It's a pit stop, but for the entire engine.
It's open heart surgery in a parking lot, performed by mechanics on a strict deadline, with hot oil dripping on them. It's incredible to witness.
Okay, we've built the monster, we've fueled it with explosives, and we've accepted that it will melt. Now we have to drive it. Let's talk about the physics of the launch. It starts with the Christmas tree.
The electronic starting device. It's iconic.
You have the pre-stage, stage 3, amber, and then the green light. But I want to talk about the reaction times. We found this Reddit debate about what constitutes a fast human.
It's a great comparison. The average human reaction time to visual stimulus like seeing a light change is maybe 0.200 or 0.250 seconds, a quarter of a second.
Right. If you're playing a video game and you react in that time, you're doing okay. But in Top Fuel,
A pro driver averages between 0.040 and 0.060 seconds.
0.04 of a second? That is nearly superhuman. How are they that fast?
They aren't reacting to the green. That's the secret. If you wait until you actually see the green light, you have already lost.
So what are they reacting to?
They are anticipating the flash of the amber. They are reacting to the sequence, hitting the gas while the light is still amber, knowing that by the time their muscles fire and the car reacts, the light will be green. It's a conditioned reflex.
And there is a physics loophole here called rollout. This was a new concept to me.
Yes, this is a bit technical but fascinating. The timing system uses an infrared beam across the starting line. The clock starts when the front tire unblocks that beam.
Okay, so when the tire moves out of the way of the beam.
Right. Rollout is the distance the tire travels from its resting position until it actually uncovers the beam. It's usually only a few inches, but it means the car is actually moving, accelerating, before the clock officially starts.
So the car has a running start.
A microscopic one. But drivers can play with this. They can deep stage.
What is deep staging?
Imagine that invisible laser beam. You pull up until your front tire breaks the beam, the stage light comes on. If you inch forward just a tiny bit more, you are deep. You are closer to the finish line, which shortens the race distance by a few inches.
But what's the downside?
You have less rollout. You are closer to the edge of the beam. It makes it much, much easier to foul to red light if you leave too early.
So it's a game of inches.
Millimeters, really. And high-stakes poker. You're trading a shorter track for a higher chance of disqualification.
And then the launch itself. We need to talk about friction.
The traction budget, as the physics source calls it.
We have these massive wrinkle wall slick tires. Why did they wrinkle?
You've seen the slow motion footage. The tire looks like it's made of jello. When that massive torque hits the wheel, the rim spins, but the tire tread is glued to the track. The sidewall twists and wrinkles up.
Ah, so it's the sidewall absorbing the initial shock.
Exactly. This acts like a spring, winding up energy and softening the hit so the tire doesn't just break loose and smoke. It's a mechanical cushion.
And as the car speeds up, the tire changes shape.
Yes. Centrifugal force makes the tire grow. It gets taller and narrower. A 36-inch tall tire at rest might grow to 38 or 39 inches at 300 miles per hour.
And that changes the gearing.
Right. This effectively changes the gear ratio. A taller tire covers more ground per revolution, so the car effectively gears itself up for high speed without a transmission.
And the burnout beforehand isn't just for show.
No, absolutely not. It's critical. It cleans the tires, obviously, but it also heats the rubber to make it sticky. And crucially, it lays down a layer of hot rubber on the track.
So they're preparing their own launch pad.
They want to launch in the groove on top of that rubber they just laid down. Rubber on rubber has a higher coefficient of friction than rubber on asphalt.
The acceleration stats 0 to 60 in under 0.8 seconds imply a coefficient of friction well above 1.0.
Physics textbooks usually tell you that 1.0 is the theoretical maximum for friction. But with the glue they spray on the track, called VHT or PJ1, the hot rubber, and the immense downforce pushing the tire into the ground, top fuel cars achieve coefficients much higher. They are effectively geared to the ground.
Until they aren't. And that leads us to the danger. We have to talk about the history here. This sport has evolved through tragedy.
It has. The evolution of danger is written in the rule book. Every safety rule in the NHRA book is written in blood.
We have to talk about Don Garlett's Big Daddy.
The 1970 incident at Lyons Dragster has changed everything.
Up until then, dragsters were front engine. The driver sat behind the engine, straddling the differential and transmission.
Which is terrifying if you think about it. You were sitting with your legs wrapped around a spinning drive shaft and a transmission full of hot fluid, and your face is behind the oil breather. You couldn't see anything.
And in 1970, the transmission on Garlett's car exploded on the starting line.
It severed the car in half, and it severed part of his foot. It was a horrific accident, and it happened in front of thousands of people.
But while he was in the hospital looking at the ceiling, he started drawing.
He realized that if you put the engine behind the driver, the explosion would happen away from the cockpit. It seems obvious now.
It does seem obvious, but everyone told him it wouldn't work.
They all said you couldn't get traction with the engine in the back because of the weight transfer physics we talked about. They thought the front end would just lift up and flip over.
But Garlitz built Swamp Rat 14, the first successful rear-engine dragster.
And it worked.
Not only was it safer, it was faster, he could see better, the steering was more precise. Within a few years, the front-engine dragster was obsolete in the top fuel class. It's a classic case of innovation born from necessity.
And survival.
Then there is the fuel itself. The source mentions the fuel ban of 1957.
Yeah, the NHRA actually banned nitromethane for a while. They called it too dangerous. They said it was suicide. They wanted everyone to run gasoline.
But you can't stop speed.
No. The racers just went underground. They held outlaw fuel meets. The ban didn't stop the danger. It just removed the regulation and the safety oversight.
So they had to bring it back.
The NHRA eventually had to lift the ban to bring the racers back into the fold so they could regulate safety properly. It was a lesson in human nature.
And sadly, safety regulations often come too late. We have to mention the 1,000-foot rule.
This is a recent change, relatively. Drag racing has always been a quarter mile, 1,320 feet. It was the gold standard since the 1950s.
But in 2008, Scott Kalita was killed.
A terrible crash at Englishtown. His engine exploded near the finish line. The parachutes burned off. The car continued at 300 mile per hour into the sand trap and hit a concrete barrier at the very end of the shutdown area.
So they shortened the race.
They cut it to 1,000 feet. It gives the drivers an extra 320 feet of shutdown area to stop these land missiles. It changed the sport, and purists hated it, but it has almost certainly saved lives.
The cars had simply become too fast for the tracks.
Exactly. The tracks were built in the 1960s, and the cars had evolved beyond them.
It's a sobering reminder that we are dealing with forces that are constantly trying to exceed the limits of physics and safety.
The line between innovation and insanity is thinner than we think. And these guys live right on that line.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize the philosophy here. We started with the idea of the absurdity of scale.
And that's what it is. The mission of the top fuel engine is unique. It is not a marathon runner. It is not efficient. It is a bomb designed to explode in a controlled direction for 4 seconds.
11,000 horsepower versus the 1,000 horsepower of F1. The trade-off is total destruction versus efficiency.
And that trade-off creates a machine that is unparalleled in human history. There is no other machine on Earth that accelerates a human being this fast, this consistently.
I want to leave the listener with a final provocative thought from our sources. We talked about nitromethane, we talked about how it's suicide in a jug, but the YouTube source mentioned something even crazier.
The hydrazine era.
Rocket fuel.
In the outlaw days of the 60s, people were experimenting with hydrazine and other liquid rocket propellants. Stuff that was even more volatile than nitro.
Why did they stop? You'd think they would use anything to go faster.
Because it literally dissolved the engines.
Yeah.
It was so corrosive and unstable, even for the maniacs of drag racing. It reminds us that there is always a frontier that is too far.
Nitromethane is right on that edge.
It is the absolute limit of what we can control. Anything beyond that, and the machine just eats itself before it even gets to the finish line.
So the next time you start your car, listener, just sit there for a second, listen to your engine idling, and imagine that fuel pump. Imagine it consuming 15 gallons of fuel in the time it takes you to back out of your driveway.
And imagine doing it while strapped to a bomb that registers on the Richter scale.
That is top fuel. Thanks for diving in with us.
Drive safe.
See you next time.